Welcome back to Post-Traumatic Thriving. I am Dr. RandallBell. I am here with my wonderful co-host, TanyaBrown.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, nice to see you.
Gosh, this is amazing. What a phenomenal guest we have.
Ken Druck.
Yeah.
I had heard Ken's name mainly from you, Tanya.
Yeah.
And, you know, all I got to say is, and go back if you're skipping ahead to thrive. A lot of people want to just jump right to thriving. Mm-hmm. You got to process this trauma stuff. Mm-hmm. Go back to episode 1. If that doesn't yank the chain of emotion, I don't know what will, because Ken lost his daughter in a horrible accident when she was supposed to be just having a good time traveling through India. The bus flipped over. A nightmare phone call at 10:30 in the morning. Episode 2, Ken, Tanya, I've never taken notes before.
I know. And we don't want to demean anybody who's been on our guests.
No. We have wonderful guests.
We've had great guests.
But it's like, I need this stuff.
Yeah.
The 6 honorings, and what was going through my head when it was this is honoring my own dad. I had a complicated relationship with my dad because I was a big screw off. He was very patient with me, and he was just a wonderful guy, kind of a quiet giant kind of guy. And so, Ken, I just want to say welcome back. Mm-hmm. And thank you for these things in episode 2. Yeah. You'll want to listen to that episode 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
it's
for
that
sure.
good.
It's that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Ken, this is the thrive stage, and this is where we'll let loose, because for those who don't know, Ken has been on Oprah, has written best-selling books, the Phil Donahue show. Mm-hmm. This is a time to really bring out the point. Ken's a really big deal.
Yeah.
We're really very honored to have you here, Ken. Thank you. And
you're just Ken. I mean, I've known you for over 20 years, and here I'm learning so much about you. You know, I know the story, I know your experience, but all your accomplishments that we're going to be talking about, and you know what we talked about in the last episode. I was just Randy and we were just sitting back going, "Hey, this is the Ken
I'm taking
Druck
notes,"
show.
and then during the break, Tanya's like, "Let me take pictures of those."
You guys, that's how good that episode was. And I think with our state of the union right now, it's just, we're in chaos, and this can be, what he shares in that episode is applicable for anything in anybody's life, whether it's grief, loss, whatever, struggles, chaos, whatever it is. I love those honorings.
Yeah. So the first question I got you, there's a series of books I want to show and recommend. I'm going to be reading this myself. The way I read books is weird. I get the audio version and then I get the hard book, and I do both because speaking of learning differences, is that what they're called now, Ken?
Differences?
Yeah, I kind of have them a little bit. I don't claim to be a high IQ guy. I need more than one bite at the apple to get things. And this is stuff I really want to observe. Your first book, The Real Rules of Life. Ken, talk to us about this book and talk about the audiences you've shared it with, and give us the high points that we need to know.
Randy, the Real Rules of Life book was me arriving, looking at my watch and saying, "Oh my God, I'm turning 65. And hearing my angel daughter say, "Dad, get a life. You're working 90 hours a week. You're taking calls from all over the world, from people who are in their worst moment of hell. They're in their dark night of the soul moment.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to get a life? When are you going to do some other things? You can't keep spending 80 to 90 hours a week doing this."
No.
So my angel daughter and my earth daughter were saying the same thing to me. And I said, okay, it's time to turn the page on that chapter, those chapters of my life. And I started doing that. And one of the things I realized is that I want to stay in the conversation. I want to keep learning. I want to keep sharing what I've been through. How do I do that? And writing a book, I'd written a couple of other books, and writing a book was the way it made sense. So I started the Real Rules of Life book. And for me, it was distilling the essence of everything I'd learned, working with the 9/11 families, working with the Sandy Hook families, Katrina, I was called into most every major tragedy. Boston, the bombings in Boston, the shootings in Las Vegas, and on, as well as a lot of very things that you never heard about, but were happening in different
just as tragic
families' lives, tragedies, terrible tragedies, and often with prominent figures in the world who had gone through a horrible tragedy. So it's the distilled essence of everything that I learned.
Yeah.
Starting with life is not fair. It's more than fair. How could both be true? How could we think of things in paradoxical terms? My daughter's gone and she's right here. She's never left my side. How could both things be true? And I started thinking, instead of living in an either or world, and I was writing about the both and world. So what the both and world is, I was giving a speech and I said exactly what I just shared with you guys. I said, my daughter is gone. Her body came back from India. I held her body. I gave her my daughter's eulogy. Unspeakable. But she was gone. I stood with her body and she was no longer in her body. But she was right here. She's never left my side. And I said that, and somebody made this for me. This little guy, it has the Hebrew word hineni. It's a palindrome. It's spelled the same way in each direction. And it means, I am here. Here I am. It's the presence of spirit. So somebody made this for me. So whenever I want to feel that, whenever I need that reminder that she's gone and my heart's broken, and how could this life be so unfair that she didn't get to live out this life? Somebody as magnificent as my daughter. You know, whenever I feel that, then I go back to here I am. And I allow myself to feel both. Both are true. There's a time for this, there's a time for that. Okay? So for me, that book has 20 gems like that, 20 rules that deal specifically with things like that. The feeling that life isn't fair. Some of us camp out in life isn't fair. That's it. That's the end program. We just live in life is not fair. You know, and what can we do? What can we think besides life is not fair? Also, what is the path to healing? It's everything in there that I've learned from working with families that have gone through horrible tragedies. It's all in that book.
Yeah. I got so much I got to interject. One is the science, and for lack of a better word, the science of trauma recovery has gotten so good.
Yes.
There's no reason to just wallow in suffering. I'm not trying to dismiss the grieving process. This shouldn't be misunderstood. But, you know, the real rules of life by Dr. Ken Druck is one of these gems that gives us the science, because there's been enormous, like, the academic science as well as real lived experiences commingled or put together to give people a roadmap of what this recovery process looks like.
When I teach grief literacy, a term that I coined years ago at the Harvard School of Public Health, or when I give a program like the one we gave in Indiana, or to families of military that have been lost, or programs on COVID, those of us, the million people, the families that have lost somebody to COVID or whatever. It's often with exactly what you just said. It's like, how do we process these things?
Yeah.
We don't live in a grief literate world. We live in a world that wants us to get over it. Come on, hurry up, get over it, get on with it. Because
slap a Band-Aid on.
Messy business. It's messy business.
Yeah.
We can't figure out. We are engineered, especially us guys.
Yeah.
We're engineered to do what? Figure it out and fix it. Figure it out and fix it. We are figure out and fix guys.
Yeah.
But my daughter Jenna taught me something at age 2. That's the antithesis of figure out and fix. And she'd look at me and she'd say, Daddy, be with.
No.
Be with.
At 2 years
In other
old.
words, put down the newspaper, put down your work, close the computer, get off the screen, be with me. No distractions. Let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk. Let's play.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? What's that? Let's be curious. Let's go into the world in a sense of wonder. But be with has become the core ethic of when I started the nonprofit foundation for my daughter. I started the Jenna Druck Center. And we won the Distinguished Contribution in Psychology Award and this award, the Visionary Leadership. We won all these awards because what were we doing? We had a program called Families Helping Families.
Mm-hmm.
It was one family helping another family. It wasn't experts helping families.
Mm-hmm.
We know more than you, and we're going to tell you how to do it. No, it was creating safe spaces like this for people to process their grief.
Yeah.
To be able to air it out without fear of being judged or shamed or shut down or shunned because it's too messy. Would you clean this stuff up before, we go on?
Yeah, bury it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, take a big drink and forget about it.
Just even with grief, I mean, people run away from it. You mentioned it before in one of the episodes. I can't recall, but people run away from it. It's very uncomfortable. People don't know what to say. They don't know how to act. They run away when you're like in your deepest, darkest moments, right? So I love that you coined grief literacy because people don't know what to say, how to act, when to call. It's like, I'm taking that with me. Just put your hand over your heart.
Get your foot off your throat, put your hand on your heart.
And just go, hey, can I bring you a casserole today? So anyway, I know I kind of segued there. But
the other thing that's in there in that book is the do's and don'ts of grief support. Everybody comes up and says, hey,
get over it.
My friend died, or my friend's daughter, or my friend's son, or my sister's, whatever. And what does it mean? What should I do? So grief support, there's a whole protocol called the do's and don'ts of grief support. And we put that into a program that I've been doing for years called the Compassionate Workplace, where we go in over a lunch hour and we train fellow employees, coworkers who need to learn. Here is the world, business is the world of gains and profits and losses, right? And how a company suffers its losses is going to determine its success. In the consulting world, that's what you try to do. It's resilience. You're teaching resilience. So when we go do our Compassionate Workplace, it's not only a training program for how to do business, but it's a training program for how do you support the coworker who's going to who needs the money, who needs to get back to work, who loves the work they've been doing, but their whole world has changed. What does support look like? And what does support not look like? And it shows all those things. Yeah.
So one question I got to ask you, Ken, is in the post-traumatic growth literature from Calhoun and the other gentleman that starts with a T, which I'm not remembering. Anyway, they did a lot of research into post-traumatic growth, and I've incorporated a fair amount of it in my own research. And their first thing out of the 5 stages is, I don't know, I forget the exact word they use, but it's something along the lines of spirituality, not necessarily religion. It sounds like religion wasn't a big part of your path, but spirituality was, or what do you want to kind of, you got so many books that are falling all over the place.
No.
All right.
Spirituality in the sense, kind of back to one of the honorings, is to cultivate a spiritual relationship. And I think humility, mixing in a little dose of humility, it's like, can anybody say with 100% certainty that they know the true nature of life and death and meaning? That's what faith is. It's our best guess. It's our heartfelt guess. It's our most deepest, most profound wish that I pray the nature of life is such that I'm reunited with my daughter. I hold that possibility in faith. You'll hear it when I go. You will hear a cry of joy, unlike anything you've ever heard. It'll be me reconnecting with Jenna. Do I hold that in faith? Yes. Do I know that with any degree of certainty? or when I hear her or speak with her and I tell her I love her, or we have conversations about the way things are. Do I know, am I a delusional father who's desperately clutching and grasping for to make sense of something that I can't know with, I bet my faith. I still go with it. Whatever gives us comfort, whatever gives us hope, whatever allows us to entertain the possibility that there is more to this. What do we know for certain? Again, we're on this grain of sand speeding through space. What do we know for certain about this life and this existence? Well, we know one thing for certain, the love that never dies. And so feed it, feel it, and base, leaving a legacy of love is a lot of my mission at this point in my life. I want to leave a legacy of love, not of chaos, not of brokenness, not of resentment, not of unresolved grief.
Yeah.
I reserve the right to cry whenever I need to. I can walk with a limp in my heart without shame. I no longer have shame. I don't apologize if I need tears. I don't make excuses. I don't try to clean it up. I'm no longer being bound or paralyzed or limited by fear. And that's, for me, if you say, Ken, what are some of the greatest accomplishments of your life? You go on CNN regularly and you've spoken to the UN, and I would say, honestly, it's having overcome as much fear as I've overcome, and the freedom, the emotional freedom that I have to stay on more of a compassionate, loving track. Do I still get angry? Am I still a guy? Yeah. But it's having cultivated those things is probably one of the greatest accomplishments of my life.
Well, I'm sitting here talking to you, and you have this it's more than a calming demeanor. It's more like I don't know about
grounded.
Yeah, grounded, and it's like
enlightened, maybe.
Yeah, it's all those things. But what were you like, X years ago, right after your daughter was tragically killed? What were you like then? To see the contrast.
I was an absolute, utter mess. And I reserve the right to have that messy part of me, that broken part of me, whenever and in whatever way it needs to resurface. It has my complete permission and support and love. So I don't restrict my grief. Is not linear in that sense.
Right.
It's sometimes we grieve harder in the years ahead. Why? Because we're stronger. We can handle it now. We sometimes with children, it's like a parent dies or somebody dies, and suddenly that child 5 or 10 years later is grieving. They're going through a terrible period. They're getting into fights with school. What's going on? Well, they cognitively have developed the ability and emotionally the strength to be able to experience what happened. And now they're going through it because they've grown. So post-traumatic thriving and growth is often because we've become the stronger. It's not that we're weak or we're falling apart now. It's because we've become strong enough to handle it. We've become strong enough to embrace the truth of it and to live on.
I like the term emotional freedom. I like that. It makes sense. Don't hold that stuff in. Put your hand over your heart.
I didn't hear what
emotional freedom.
Oh, right. And I'm still have emotional literacy, or what was we?
Grief literacy.
Grief literacy. That's something I have to put on my sticky note and remind myself of that one, because that's such a great
it's a good one.
term.
It's an important one.
Another
term too, like that people use when you're grieving. If it's, say for example, we've heard that people have said this to my mom, where it's like, oh well, at least you got 3 more.
Gee.
Oh no, people say
that's on the don't list,
right? Exactly. That's definitely on the don't list.
Do not say that.
I've actually done it.
Do not say that.
one.
Yeah.
Here's the comedy routine.
Okay.
It's like, what do parents ask what do adults ask other adults? Do you have any children?
Sure.
Do you have any children? How many kids do you have? Or do you have any? Okay, but this is a question. I'm sure you've been asked, and you've got to say no. I chose not to.
Right.
But so when people say, how many kids do you have? Or people come up to you after you've lost a child, you know what the most common question is? Do you have any other children?
Oh, God.
And so the comedy routine behind that is, oh my God, I have another one. Why have I been so sad all this time? Stupid me. How could I have forgotten? I got another one at home. Honey, I'll be right home. It's because the insensitivity and the ignorance, and it's not malicious.
Right.
No.
But what people just don't realize, they have depended in deep water, they have depended on saying things and doing things that make sense. Let's invoke a religious truth. God needed another angel.
Yeah.
Or she's in a better place. Or
God needs young ones too.
At the Jenna Druck Center, we had the 10 stupidest, we had a list, the 10 stupidest things people have ever said. And we'd replace them. We get new ones and like, oh my God, that one's better. That, because people don't realize, it's don't invoke either a psychological or a religious or anything, but it is a spiritual gesture. It is, in a deep spiritual sense, a reverence.
Yeah.
To be able to just be with another human being. The essence of the greatest religions has been compassion. Don't judge. The lack of judgment.
Yeah.
Create a judgment-free zone out of your circle. It's all that distilled essence of the greatest religions that I see in the realm of spirituality are exactly what's needed when it comes to taking care of ourselves or supporting somebody we love who has just suffered a loss.
Yeah. When you're saying that, I don't know, for some weird reason, because you worked on Heaven's Gate, or that was in San Diego. I worked on Heaven's Gate, and they had this kind of monologue. I mean, I'm talking about the members of the cult, where they were kind of like, don't grieve for us because we're going to this better place. And it just sounds utterly ridiculous as they're saying it. And yet that's what people are saying to those of us who are grieving, just these dismissive, sugar-coated, cotton candy things. I understand that it comes from a place of love, but it does us some real damage.
Here's what I learned about that, Randy. The woman who said to me 2 weeks after Jenna died, everything works out for the best. She's in a better place. Who I wanted to choke and throw to the ground. I realized, you know what? She might be right. But she was dead wrong for saying it to me. The messaging.
Yeah.
So what we all need to learn is that we can be right. For all I know, Jen is in a better place. Like, holy moly.
But don't say
Wouldn't that be great? But to tell me 2 weeks into losing my daughter, whose place was in this life, getting a loser boyfriend, at least one, graduating college, thriving, blossoming out into the world, having grandkids if she chose that, being my best friend and my soulmate, along with my other daughter, who's now equally that. My other daughter she's taken the best of her sister's qualities and the best of her own qualities that have blossomed. So from her going from talk about turning adversity into opportunity, she has blossomed into this incredible human being. Incredible. And she helps sisters who've lost their sister. Yeah, she works with sibling loss.
Because in the back of my mind, you mentioned your other daughter and that she was struggling for a while.
Steffi's a light. She is, Steffi came up to me at one point and said, Dad, you couldn't have done anything. I needed to go through what I went through. I needed that challenge and that struggle, but I know who I am now. I know what I'm about. I know what's important. and she has a husband who I love. Unbelievable. He fell right out of heaven. And they have twins that I love. And during COVID, I got to, I was the grandpa nanny. Along with Lisette and I were the grandparents because you can't get a nanny.
Yeah.
During COVID, they've been in and out. And your kids aren't vaccinated. They're little ETs. So, but I've gotten to know them now. And it's one of the great joys of my life.
Well, as a dad, I got to just say, I'm so thrilled to hear about Steffi doing so wonderfully.
Yeah. How old is she?
Steph's in her early 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
terrific.
she is amazing.
Aww.
Talk about a wise.
Yeah.
She needed to go through it.
She went through what she went through, and she understands now what people, you talked before about mental illness and mental challenges and things kids go through and drugs, sex, and rock and roll. She says, Dad, I understand how all that works. And she helps people. She touches people's lives all over. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it sounds like she's honoring her sister by all this.
Honors and loves. We honor and love Jenna.
Yeah.
Pieces. And she's also helped a lot as a sibling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Siblings, because, one of the first things she said is, Dad, how come everybody asks, how are your parents doing? It's like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Don't you want to know how I'm doing? My sister died,
Yeah.
My last phone call, she called in the middle of the night from Africa, and I was sleeping, and I had to get up, and I said, Jenna, I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you some other time.
Oh.
That was the last phone conversation.
That's hard.
She said,
well, that's hard.
Try to understand what it's like for me.
Yeah.
Don't put it off. Parents are huge. What you brought up before in our second session was so important about what our parents go through, what that's like for the siblings when a child has been lost.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I have a girlfriend. She's a local here. Her name's Kara Courtney. She doesn't mind if I mention her name. Her sister Kim got killed in a car accident at Dana Hills High School in 1982 or 1983. And we were having a conversation about this, about sibling loss, about 3-4 months ago. So I would love to talk to Stephanie and put her in touch with Kara, and because people don't ask, like, how are you? Now they do, but when I was going through it, nobody asked, like, how are you? Like, how's mom and dad? I can't believe your mom and dad are going through this. So yeah. And that conversation with Kara just now really just opened up my eyes again. It is an important thing because we get lost.
Yeah. And years ago, there was only one sibling loss program in the United States.
Oh, is that right?
Before we created a second one at the Jenna Druck Center, but the other one was at Harvard. That was it. It's like, are you kidding me? That's it?
Yeah. Well, and what we're doing here is modeling. There's two, what I call the dynamic duo. I'd love to hear what you have to think about this, but I learned these from the inmates at San Quentin Prison, because they walk into prison, they've been traumatized, they are triggered, they commit a crime. It's a cycle, scientifically, it's all been laid out what the process looks like. And the dynamic duo, one is grounding, deep breathing exercises, meditation. And what you said about the be here now, daddy, be present. Yeah. Be with. That's brilliant, because that's the essence of grounding. Grounding is Sarah Lazar out of Harvard, speaking of Harvard, has documented the process of grounding, exercising, and being mindful and being in the present. The other one is sitting in the fire, having these conversations. And what you just kind of alluded to there, Tanya, is having these conversations are so important. So here's the question I got for you, Ken. That's the longest question you ever heard. And the question for you, Ken, you worked on Sandy Hook. I worked on Sandy Hook. And when I was there, it was so emotionally charged. I can't even find the adjectives. And then what was even worse was compounding on top of the tragedy of all these parents losing their kids at elementary school was these conspiracy theorists, these nut jobs, frankly, that come out with these theories. And then I was reading somewhere about some conspiracy theory on the dates when we transferred Adam Lanza's house. And I was involved in that. And I was the one that was calling the shots. I was making the decisions. The last thing I had on my mind was picking a date that coincided with some anniversary, something, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for 100% fact, there was no conspiracy because I was involved. That's how emotionally charged it was. And so these poor parents have lost a kid. Then they got these people saying you didn't really lose your kids and, you know, crazy stuff like that. So I'm finally going to get to my question, Ken, and ask you, when you show up, now I'm working on the real estate side. So I got the easy job and I'm sensing the emotional charged environment. When you're showing up, actually talking to the families, and I was meeting with the mayor, I was meeting with the chief of police, they were traumatized. The whole community's traumatized.
Imagine.
I did programs with the community, the whole community.
Yeah, I know you did. And so can you share some of the key things that you shared with them? Because I think it would be fascinating to hear.
Well, the first thing is I don't go in immediately. It is a gold rush immediately. When I get called, I want to find out exactly who's making decisions, who is there, who's coordinating everything that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's people are in such a deep state of shock. And in the beginning, there are going to be the memorials, there's going to be the celebrations of life, there are thousands of moving parts. And it's not a time to send in the shrinks or the priests or the rabbis with a healing agenda. It's a time of listening. It's a time of honoring. It's a time of ease where people get the assurance that I'm not here. This is not quick. There's no fix to this. We can't fix this. Nobody's going to try. And where we're asking them, how can I be most helpful right now? What could I do that would be most helpful? And sometimes it's, would you please help with the house situation, the property?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's, there are some nut jobs. Would you please create a safe perimeter in our community?
Right.
So the grief groupies and the nut jobs don't get in.
Yeah.
Would you please create a protective ring?
Mm-hmm.
It can be anything, but that's what you're in service to.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, no matter what agenda. You can't come in there with the agenda that, I've got my cookie cutter healing traumatic loss, agenda, and I'm going to lay it out. So it also should be a relationship that somebody can continue over time.
Right.
So the people are getting to meet you. You've listened to what them say. You've earned their trust because you've followed up with what you said and what they asked for.
Right.
And then there will come different times. And for everybody, it's different. Some families wanted, please come into our home. I don't want to go to a public meeting. I don't want to sit in a support group. Would you please come to our home? Mm-hmm. And then also the community itself. We had meetings, the community was in chaos. What community ever has to deal with a tragedy of this magnitude? They were in chaos. There were opposing forces and people doing this and that. So we had a community meeting that started with, because we're smart, we will what? Because we're respectful and compassionate, we will what? Let's fill in the blanks. Let's be the community. Let's learn from what happened in Oklahoma, because all the other people came in from other places to say, we're going to help you. But let's take what we're learning from those people and design what's right for our situation, with the understanding that this is all going to unfold slowly over time, unevenly over time.
Yeah.
And that we are just in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you don't need to rush or figure out, or we're not going to put a Band-Aid on this. We're not going to, the last word I want to hear in a situation like that is closure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, no.
There's no more destructive word in the language of grief literacy than closure.
Yeah.
Or misunderstood word.
Horrible word to use. And I know what you mean, but can you share with folks, when you say grief groupies, put a little more explanation for those who don't know what that is.
People, in the East, they call it rubbernecking when there's an accident on the highway and all the traffic is slowed up. Why?
Because everybody's looking.
Everybody wants to look.
Right.
It's a horror. The part of us that is curious, is horrified, but we still look.
Yeah.
There are people that somehow feel more alive being close to the horrific elements of that kind of a tragedy. And so they come in close often under some pretense or another, but they take energy. They don't bring energy. They take energy and draw attention to their own needs and their own agenda.
So thank you. And so thanks. For a member of the community, because one thing I noticed, particularly at Hurricane Katrina, and I know you also worked on Katrina, and I was there right it hadn't even drained. The water was still, draining away. Was the amount of people, there are the negative side, the grief groupies and the people, the rubberneckers. And
some of them are politicians, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
In case.
Yeah.
When I went into TWA after the TWA flight, there was the mayor of New York at the time came in, didn't have a clue what he was doing and was walking around because somebody told him he should. Didn't know what the hell he was saying, talking about, and was just an interference, a horrible impediment to the process. A distraction. Had to be coached and trained.
But what I've also noticed, I agree with every word you said there, Ken, but I've also noticed on the positive side that there are people that will take what canned goods they have in their pantry, the blankets from their bedroom, they will show up and start handing out what little they got and the $400 they have in savings in the bank to go down and help people. I've noticed, and this is a question I'm going to have for you, but it'll give you.
These are the grief angels. They're grief groupies.
And then grief angels.
But the grief angels are, the best in us.
Yes.
The most compassionate, the most heartful, the most generous, the most selfless.
Right.
And thank God, I don't know if I would have survived without them.
Right. And so here's my question, because one thing I've noticed, and this is my observation, I'm going to ask you about yours. For every grief groupie, there's a 10x. There's 10 times more love that comes out from the community.
The love prevails.
Always. Slam dunk, always prevails, always wins. That's your experience too.
Yes, it is.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah. The goodness, it gives us faith and hope to realize that there are at least 10 times as many more people, even if they haven't shown up in the first week or 2 or 5, that they will appear when they figure out how they can be a part of the healing, a part of the reconciliation, and they don't need their names in the credit either. They don't show up to, to show, it's not their agenda.
Very quiet.
And it's a blessing. It brings out the best, the very best. Look, one of my best friends in the world, I wrote my daughter's eulogy, and he said, right before the funeral, he said, "Can I read this for you? Would that be better if I read this for you? You sit in the first row and read it for her." And I said, "I think so." I was destroyed.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And then he looked down after the first sentence he read. He looked down, he looked into my eyes, and he said, "Do you want to read this?" I looked up and I said, "Yeah, I do." And I got up. He went one sentence into it. He looked into my eyes, and I got up and I read my daughter's eulogy. Wow. Yeah. So there are angels that appear in all different forms and ways. And I haven't stopped thanking them over the years. I will cherish and remember that, or learning from them what it means when people, the do's and don'ts of grief support is the do's are half written. It's the manifesto of the angels.
Yeah. That's a powerful story.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we got 2 more books to talk about.
I'm going to talk about it briefly.
Okay. We'll talk about it briefly. Turn it right side up. Courageous Aging.
Yeah.
by Dr. Ken Druck. Share what you'd like to share.
Randy, why would a guy who's writing about and giving programs all over the world about grief and loss start writing about courageous aging, about aging? You know, it's not only that I looked at my watch and I could hear both my daughters saying, Dad, you're 65. You know, fourth quarter, back 9.
Back 9.
You know, time is passing.
Back 9. That's
Are
funny.
there other things that you might want to be doing? You know, is there a reset button? Is the season of your life? Might you want to, you're going to continue parts of it, but might you want to also diversify your investments? So it was time. I also came up with an amazing connection when I thought of all the things that people struggle with, whether they're turning 40 or 50 or 60 or 90 or whatever. When people are struggling with the issues of aging, what are they doing? They're grieving the loss of their younger self.
Mm.
I know a lot about grieving. I should write about this. I should talk. I should try to connect some of these dots. We're grieving, and we're also grieving the loss of our future self. I'm not going to be here.
What's the world going to
What's
do
that
without me?
What the hell am I going to do without me? What goes on?
Yeah.
What's that about? Who made this thing up? Whose plan? So there's the existential crisis that all of us go through when we realize the impermanence of life as we know it. So, yeah.
I don't know what you're putting in your cornflakes to think this brilliantly, but I want some. Seriously.
I like that. I know.
I've been studying disasters and recovery, and along comes Ken Druck and just like, well,
here it is.
Wow, here's a whole new level.
So for me, Randy, the gift, here's the gift.
Oh.
The gift is we're all going to die.
Yeah.
We know that. We avoid it. We deny it. We hide. We repress it. We try to outrun it. We try to outlive it. We try to out everything.
Yeah.
Numb it. But how really what we want is to live, be alive all the rest of our days. Have those days be good. Take care of ourselves a little more if we can. But to be vibrant and alive and awake and becoming the better version of ourselves every step of the way.
Yeah.
And when you look at what takes up all of our energy, what robs us of our joy, of our exuberance, of our hope, of our ability to reimagine the future, it's the fear of death. It's the dread of aging, of becoming the diminished version of ourselves. So how about we face into that now? We find a way to come to terms with that. As not completely, we're always going to kick and scream a little. But what if we came to terms with it 25% better than we do now? What if we faced into that demon, that fear demon? What if we deal with it? What if we open that question, we create an inquiry into the great beyond? What's beyond this? We reimagine the possibilities. And even if we're not going to be there, we reimagine how we can be there without being there. How can I be there for my grandkids when I'm not there? What can I do? What am I in a position to do? So I've started that, leaving that legacy of love for me meant cleaning up all the clutter in my life. I've got files. I don't know about you. I've got files and papers and crap and, and old things. And I have my mother's stuff and, my daughter's stuff. I've got garage and sheds full of things. How do I not leave that inheritance to somebody else? who would take a year of their life to unravel,
Yeah.
to organize and get rid of, or to save. So that's a project in my life. And that's what Courageous Aging's about. And then the person who read Courageous Aging the most were the sons and daughters of aging parents. They were the 45, 50, 60, 70-year-old.
And there we go.
And that's my hand in the middle, and my daughter's hand on mine, and one of her son's hand on the side.
I love it.
I love that cover.
Lisette took that picture. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great photo.
So the question then becomes, how do we, what you were talking about earlier, Randy, you're going to talk with your dad.
Yeah.
How do we connect? How do we give the gift of a loving connection, even though we may want to choke our, my mother was the only person, she could reduce me to a screaming, blithering 8-year-old when she was 90 years old. She was the only person in the world who could do that.
Yeah.
You know, because she would trigger things for myself, my sister, whatever. How do I give her the gift of my understanding, my patience, my not triggered self? How do I help her make the rest of her ride a time of joy, of peacemaking? How do I help her let go and let go of her life and let go of whatever and cope with the physical issues that were arising for her? How do I show up that way?
Yeah.
So that's what that second book is about. It's how do we show up in our aging parents' lives, and how's that going to help us? Because it sets the table for how we want people to show up for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gives us a profound understanding of how we can take and how we can put plans together. You know, because putting our houses in order
Absolutely.
is the task. How do I put my house in order? I encourage people, I work with ALS patients and MS patients and whatnot who are dying.
Yeah.
And I tell them, put your house in order.
Yeah.
Pack your bags. I don't want you to die. Don't die.
But
You don't buy life insurance to die. You buy it so you can live at peace, that if something does happen, the people you love will be taken care of. Don't die,
yeah.
but live at peace. Have peace in your life that you've put your house in order. Your bags are packed spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. So that if something does happen, you'll be able to help yourself pass from this into whatever it becomes.
Yeah.
You know, to mention, there's a mortuary here in Laguna Niguel, Connor Mortuary, and I actually worked for Vitas Healthcare for a good year and a half. It was inspired because we were primary caregivers for my dad. And then when I heard my mom say, I guess this is what they call caregiver burnout, that's when I went to my sisters and said, okay, we need to do something. So it seems like, in fact, I just had a conversation with a friend of mine up in San Francisco. His sister is 92, 93 years old. And, the family members, I was looking at the table of contents, the family members, can go at it. And so when you've got one sibling who, we were great. Like we work collectively together, but this family,
Complicated matter.
Very much so. I'm going to share this book with him because I firmly believe it will help him communicate with his brother, because his brother is very, very hard-headed.
There is a section about sibling rivalry that gets superimposed into the life of the aging.
Yeah. And
what that means, how that is, it's almost as if one of the greatest forms of sacrilege is putting children in a divorce in the crossfire of unfinished business between their parents.
Yeah.
Or triangulating kids. The same sacrilege is when siblings are at each other's throats and a parent is dying or going through a very difficult stage. And how do we diffuse? How do we de-escalate? How do we do that?
Yeah.
And that's, we live in a world that's back in school about the choice of de-escalating behavior or escalating behavior. And we're all back in school again. We never thought we'd be facing some of the issues that we're facing now.
Yeah.
How do we protect ourselves? How do we defend ourselves? How do we survive this hostile moment? What do we do to de-escalate? What do we do to communicate? What do we do to value each other's fears, worst fears, or to really deal with each other's greed and psychosis?
Yeah.
There are crazy people in the world who want to do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
How do we de-escalate that?
We're
all learning.
I'm sorry. I liked how you said, clean up your house, pack your bag, whatever what was the house? Pack your bags. My dad planned his demise 40 years before he passed. 40 years ago.
Your dad was a pioneer.
He was like, he even left a file for my mom that said, should you start dating again?
Don't.
She was a beautiful lady.
It was so
Don't
funny.
take my brother or this guy.
It was so funny. But what I was saying is that it was such an easy process with my dad because everything was already planned. This is an uncomfortable conversation to have. But I had mentioned O'Connor Mortuary. They have a liaison that actually says, let's pack your bags. I don't know the name of the program, but it's basically like a checklist, like things that you need to get done before the thing happens, before, your ultimate demise happens, because eventually it's going to happen.
I'm reaching down because this is a great.
Perfect.
Oh my gosh.
See, okay. And this, I think
by a friend of mine.
This is so critical, Ken.
Remarkable book. It has every element. Step-by-step guide to leaving your loved ones with information they need to know. Rosemary Paul is.
I love this.
Shout out to Rosemary Paul.
Yes, you know what, Rosemary? Because this is why I firmly believe people don't grieve healthy. Do you want to?
You said it all. It's uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
So what? Everybody should sit down and say, here are 5 uncomfortable situations I have been meticulously avoiding, hiding from, denying, repressing, sidestepping, passively resisting. Here are 5 conversations with 5 people that are very important. This is my work this year. And maybe you break off a couple of them for this year and a couple next year.
Yeah.
But it's that willingness to venture out of our comfort zone into the opportunity zone. It's like turning adversity and discomfort into an opportunity,
right,
to become the better version of my relationship, of our relationship, of myself, of the love we have for each other, freeing that love for each other. How many people are buried under resentment and animosity with people they love? So many,
yeah.
And if you go see a good counselor or coach, they can in 5 minutes uncover, when they pull the cover on that resentment and anger and the narrative that's blazing, to keep that person at a distance, they uncover all this love. There are the tears and the I'm so sorry and remorse, and how could we have wasted so much time?
Yeah.
But that's our work. That's the ripening of a human being, is to summon the courage to do that work and make our lives and ourselves better.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so Ken, I got to tell you quickie. I once had dinner with a very famous movie producer. And if I mentioned his movies, you'd all instantly know who he was. It was just me and him, I think, at dinner. Anyway, and we go out to his tennis court. He's showing me all this trophies and stuff given to him by famous movie stars and all this. And on the tennis court, and he had been married to a wonderfully famous actress, and they got divorced because he was very neglectful and, typical kind of story. Anyway, out on the tennis court, he stopped and he looked at me. He goes, "Randy, do you know why I've done all this?" And I didn't know. I just said, "Tell me." And he says, "Because when you're dead, but when you make a movie, you live forever." Oh. And I thought, that is the oddest concept of immortality I've ever heard. I don't know how you feel about it. That's what struck me, because I like your concept of immortality a lot better. It resonates true. And I know you've been very generous with your time. I want to say thank you for that. And I want to ask you one last question, and you can answer it as short or as long as you want. The floor is going to be yours. But what is your, and again, thank you.
Yeah.
What is your imparting or departing wisdom?
Departing.
What other wisdom do you want to share with us? Because you've given us so much.
So much.
I have the feeling that we're going to have to get on your case and invite you back. But absent that whole conversation, the floor is yours.
In every moment, there's a gift. In every moment of life, there's a gift. In every moment of life, there's also a sorrow. We're asked to live in this confounding existence. What? We're here and then we're gone? What? We fall deeply in love with people. We take them into the deepest reaches of our heart, and then we lose them?
Mm-hmm.
They're gone? We're supposed to live on and live out our lives without them? Figure that out? This life is the whole package. It's all of those things. And for every moment that we can show up and cherish, even this moment here, look at us. You know, who knows? I've got to drive back to San Diego. Who knows what, there's fires out over here and the world is in chaos, and goodness knows it's a blessed moment that we get to be here and to be with each other. And do we make the most of those moments? Do we open our hearts and minds to each other and say and think about the other things? I love that you're going to talk with your dad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have so much to teach each other and to share with each other. Are we going to do it? We don't get to play God in whatever interpretation you may have about God. We don't get to be all powerful. We don't get to regulate the universe or the nature of life and death. But we do get to do this. And so with our hand on our hearts, hopefully, helping bear the sorrows, helping turn some of the sorrows back into love. Understanding that not everything is understandable or fixable, or makes sense, that we live in a mystery, this mystery called life. And I think doing that and cherishing the moments and what's already happening, even right now, what's happening is people are listening. We're on a screen right now, but it's still a moment in a lot of people's lives where they're looking for their own hand. And I can see all of us trying to put our hand out to their hearts. That's why we're here today, to put our hands on people's hearts.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of them are listening as we wind down saying, I wish I could go through the screen and thank you and put my hand on your heart. You guys for doing this, for inviting us into your living room, for having this podcast, for sharing it with the people that we love, who we know could benefit. So let's all be in that moment of gratitude together, that moment of gratitude. I'm with you. And I thank you guys for the opportunity to be here and to create this and to be a part of this great miracle.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know you've been on the big stage with Oprah and CNN and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if you've ever had an interview longer than this one, but you've shared so much. And
my grandkids, they go on. They want to change the subject every 6 seconds.
Sure do. Yeah.
Thank you.
This has just been very informative, very inspiring, very empowering, very hopeful. I think this is just, we've had some great guests, but I don't know, maybe I needed to hear this too,
That's a feeling I have too.
Yeah. Obviously, because I'm starting to cry.
Okay, well, we better wrap up.
No. But this was, I think, maybe I needed to hear it. So thank you. Thank you for giving us your heart.
We all did.
For sure.
Thank you for giving me yours as well.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Wow. Well, post-traumatic thriving, where we dive, survive, or thrive.
The choice is yours.
Salute.
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 Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the life skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.